Hey guys, today we're in the book of 2 Samuel chapter 14. So the saga continues between David and Absalom. It's been 3 years, but David wants to connect, but there's a problem because David doesn't know what to do. He doesn't really want to kill his own flesh and blood, but he is supposed to, and his brother and his sons and his daughters. It's a mess. It's a soap opera, right? But we see the love of another person. We see here in chapter 14 that Joab, his chief general of all of his mighty men, of all of his war, knew that David's heart was breaking, and it was over Absalom, who was away in Geshur. And so Joab goes and finds a woman, and he tells this woman to act like a widow, act like somebody who just lost their son, and tell David this story. And so she does, and she tells this made-up story to David that says, hey, I had 2 sons, one killed another, and now everybody wants to kill this other one. My heart is breaking. What should happen, right? And so through this event, through this story, David tells her that he says, please let the king invoke in the Lord your God, that the avenger of the blood kill no more, and my son be not destroyed. David chooses family over justice. The Bible has clearly stated that if this woman's son killed the other, then as the avenger of the blood, he must go and kill this person, this killer, right? It's in the book of Numbers chapter 35 that talks about this section. But David says, don't do that. Because he's family, because it's so dear, because it's your only son, okay, here's what you can do, right? We're going to let this slide, right? And so instantly the woman says, this is the problem. This is exactly what's going on. She says, the king convicts himself inasmuch as the king does not bring his banished one home again. Absalom, his son, is away in Geshur in the north. And what has happened is because David is here and the son is here, the son is away and he's growing dark-hearted. He's growing he's growing against his father. And he's starting to create this kind of verge of civil war against David. And this woman, Joab, is using this woman to convey the message to King David, hey, because you won't go to your family, because you're just letting him sit up here and fester by himself, because you don't want to have a hard discussion, right? He is kind of starting to dwindle down. He's starting to tear apart Israel. You need to go, David, and you need to bring him home and talk some sense into him. Okay, so that's exactly what's going on. And so all this is happening. David says, did Joab cause all this to happen? And she says, yeah, Joab did this, right? So we truly see the heart of Joab. This was an amazing thing that Joab is trying to help his king out in a personal way, but also helping the kingdom of Israel out in a special way. And so he tells Joab, hey, bring Absalom back. And that's exactly what he does, because Joab does that well. And it says, we find out some other things about Absalom. We see that there was, verse 25, now in Israel there was no one so much to be praised for the handsome appearance of Absalom. There was no blemish in him. So it's not only that Absalom is away from David, but he's beautiful. He's good looking. He's popular, right? So that's why there's this kind of rift going on between David and Absalom, who ran away. We get a little weird story here about his haircut. He gets a haircut once a year at the end of the year. And basically, every year they cut off 200 shekels worth of the king's weight. Now, your scale doesn't go in king's shekels, but so that you know, when he gets a haircut, it's 5.5 pounds. this man had some beautiful locks of hair, okay? He looked good. Everybody loved him. He was a popular guy, and so that was the problem. He had 3 sons and 1 daughter. Notice this, and what did he name his daughter? He named his daughter Tamar. He named his daughter after his sister who had been raped by his brother, right? And so it's to live in respect of the first Tamar. This is now the second Tamar, okay? So just kind of keep them straight. And Tamar was a beautiful woman. The second Tamar was a beautiful woman. So Absalom lived 2 years in Jerusalem. So Absalom leaves the north, comes back to the south in David's Jerusalem, and he lives there for 2 years, and he never once sees David. They keep them separated, and time again, he kept calling out to Joab, hey, I want to talk to David. I want to talk to the king. I want to talk to the king. I want to talk to the king. And Joab just wouldn't let it happen because not everything is quite ready yet, right? Joab did not bring Absalom back so that they could apologize and become as if it never happened. Joab brought him back so that he wouldn't be in the north creating a civil war, right? And so if you're going to have your friends close, your enemies are closer. And that's exactly why Joab told David to bring him back. And so he's there. He wants an audience with the king, He doesn't. And then we see that Absalom burns the fire of Joab's field, right? He burns it. This just shows you how brutal and hateful Absalom is. When he doesn't get his way, he burns the fields of Joab, meaning loss of money, loss of food, meaning a lot of things, right? It's not just a field. It was a wheat field and it was a time for harvest. So he lost a lot of things. And so Joab comes to Absalom and says, why did you burn my fields? And he says, well, I've been asking to see David, but you won't happen. And he says this, 32, Absalom answered Joab, behold, I sent word, come here that I may send you to ask the king, why have I come from Geshur? It would be better for me to still be there. He says, it'd be better for me to be in the north because people love me there and I'm here in the town of David. Now, therefore, let me go into the presence of the king, and if there is guilt in me, let him put me to death. Now, remember, Absalom had killed Amnon, right? But in the eyes of Absalom, he does not believe he is guilty because Amnon raped Tamar. He raped Tamar, and so he feels he is in the right place to do it. And so much so, he says, let me go before the king, and if the king thinks I am guilty, he can kill me. I have done what was right, what needed to be done. I did what David would not do. Okay, that's the ultimate point. I did what David would not do. Then Joab went to the king and told him, and he summoned Absalom. So he came into the king and he bowed himself. He outwardly humbled himself. We're going to see if he internally humbles himself. He doesn't. But outwardly he does, on his face to the ground before the king. And the king kissed Absalom. The king forgave Absalom, right? So here we see that in this story, in the saga, it continues. And now they're back in the palace. And Absalom humbles himself. The king forgives. David forgives Absalom. And you think all things are good. You think until tomorrow, right? Until we continue to read. But the most important part of this chapter, something that you may have just read over, is going all the way back to verse 14. It says, but God will not take away life, and he devises means so that the banished one will not remain an outcast. Notice the story here. This woman, this pretend widow woman, tells a story of losing her son, and one has been banished away because of his sin. And then right here in the middle, we get this woman telling King David in the Bible, 1,000 years before Jesus, Okay, what does she tell him? That God will not take away life. He devises means so that the banished one will not remain an outcast. This is exactly why Jesus came. Every single one of us is an outcast. We have been banished because of the sin that we have caused, but the Lord does not want to destroy us. He wants to save us. And so the Lord will create a way to bring the banished one back into the throne room. Right? Absalom comes back into the throne room of David, right? And so God does the same. He has not banished us because of our sin, but God will devise a means so that the banished one will not remain an outcast. And that's why Jesus came, stepped out of heaven, put on flesh to become a way that we might come back to the throne room of God. That we, through the blood of Jesus, through the perfect sacrifice of Jesus, can stand back in the throne room of the holiness of God, and that we can be there. We are not banished forever, but through Jesus, we are allowed to come back to the throne room. That's why Jesus came. And it's an amazing statement that this woman pretending to be a widow tells King David through the whole making of Joab the general. And so there's a lot of pieces here, but it's a great statement to hold on to. Jesus came so that we would not have to be banished forever. Hope that makes a little bit more sense, and we will see you tomorrow in chapter 15. God bless.